Breakthrough Parenting, moving your family from struggle to cooperation. Lesson 2.1, Making the Shift.
You must be the change you see in the world. Breakthrough parenting is about shifting from old fear-based parenting methods to new ways of being in family relationships that promote unconditional love, positive self-worth, open communication, healthy self-esteem, compassion, responsibility, and cooperation. By making the inner and outer shifts highlighted in this lesson, you can create and enjoy a rewarding and lovely family life. Many of us determine our self-worth based on others' opinions. This is called being outer directed, and it is very common. If others approve of us, we are worthy. If others disapprove of us, we feel we must not be worthy. We can only develop the confidence needed to take action and be fully responsible for our choices when our self-worth is internally based. We are inner directed. Initially, parents are the only people children know to look to in order to find a sense of self. If the parents hold an unaccepting and critical view of their children very early in life, their children will believe, I am unworthy because I am a bad person. When parents view their children in a more positive way, the children are more likely to see themselves as important, worthy, and good people. This helps children become inner directed. Authoritarian parenting uses punishment, which creates children who are outer directed. These children look outside of themselves for how to think, feel, and behave. There are two kinds of punishment, psychological and physical. Psychological punishment can be verbal or nonverbal threats that instill fear or damage a child's self-image. Physical punishments can be slapping, spanking, or pulling hair, causing a child physical pain with the intent of associating the child's undesirable behavior with that pain. Fear is the natural result. As a method for controlling others, punishment is a powerful tool. When children are afraid, parents have incredible power over them. How does fear of their parents affect children? They will be on edge, anxious, and out of balance. Clearly, children do not function at their best when they are in fear. For that reason, punishment works against a child's ability to develop into a thinking, loving, and confident person. Think about it for yourself. When you're afraid, what are you thinking?
The use of punishment also creates resistance, rebellion, lying, or begrudging compliance. As a method for controlling children, it works at best on a short-term basis and is likely to work mostly when the punisher is present. The moment the punisher leaves, the temptation to continue the inappropriate behavior can be overwhelming, as misbehavior becomes an assertion of their desire to be self-determined. By using parenting methods that help your children become inner-directed, you can reduce this problem dramatically.
Dr. Thomas Gordon states in Discipline That Works, here is a little-known psychological truth, a paradox too. You acquire more influence with young people when you give up using your power to control them. The opposite is also true, of course. The more you use power to try to control people, the less real influence you have in their lives. Let's start first by making the shift in yourself. So we want to go from an old way of thinking to a new way of thinking and doing. We want to move from fear into love, from conditional love to unconditional love. Instead of looking to others for our self-worth, let's look at ourselves internally for our own internal self-worth. Instead of lacking boundaries in relationships, let's respect our personal boundaries. Instead of resisting change, let's embrace change. We definitely don't want to blame others. So now let's take responsibility. Instead of having a moralistic point of view, let's have compassion. No more black and white thinking. Let's live with some ambiguity. Instead of focusing on the past or the future, focus on the present and live in the present. Instead of being so defensive, let's accept feedback. No more shaming. Let's show understanding. So now let's make the shifts in your relationships. Instead of having the authoritarian power, let's focus on trying to have a shared power in team building. Instead of having a win-lose conflict, let's win and win with cooperation. No more expectation of conformity. Let's appreciate diversity. Instead of using punishment, let's use discipline with love. You definitely don't want to always catch your kids being bad. So now let's catch them being good. Instead of having power struggles, let's focus on conflict resolution. Instead of having moralism, let's have compassion. I know sometimes you want to avoid sensitive subjects, but having openness about sensitive subjects will greatly improve your relationships. Let's not be passive and aggressive. Instead, let's have assertive communication. Do not use verbal or physical abuse. Instead, promote with self-esteem. Instead of valuing material things, put your value in people. One of the biggest challenges for parents today is how to shift from fearful methods to those that empower their children to become responsible by developing a strong inner self-discipline. Self-discipline means behaving appropriately because it is the right thing to do, not because of fear or punishment. Black and white thinking. The definition is that it's an opinion that claims that there are only two alternatives. Well, you can fix this by remembering that the world is a complicated place, and on most issues, there are many alternatives. Polarized black and white thinking is characterized by me or you, this or that, right or wrong, true or false, them or us, white hats versus black hats. The mentality of always being able to know who the heroes are and who the villains are by what color hat they wear. This type of thinking has all good on one side and all bad on the other side. And then you'll always know where you stand, where life is cut and dried. Simple. Polarized black and white thinking leaves no room for shades of gray. Such thinking is typical of younger children, as they do not yet have the ability to think abstractly and are unable to consider interpretations and nuances of the situation. All of the Disney movies for children are based on this premise. So are war movies and cowboys and Indian movies, which were usually about wars. Star Wars is definitely black and white. It is easy to hate the bad guys and to cheer for the good guys. It is fun to identify with the winner when we see only winners and losers. Young children must first sort their experiences into right and wrong before they can understand their finer distinctions. It is important, however, that as soon as they are able, they understand the limitations of this simplistic way of seeing the world. You always want to avoid polarized thinking. Moralism. In adults, polarized thinking often takes the form of moralism. Moralism is not about moral or ethical thinking. Rather, it is opinions and judgments about others that they ought to behave, look and think the same way the moralists do. Moralists hold an ideal of perfection that no one can measure up to, not even the moralists themselves. They think in black and white. Institutionalized moralism can be found in totalitarian governments. They are organized around laws that are not designed to protect their citizens, but to control them by restricting their freedoms of choice and fundamental human rights. Moralists lack tolerance for people who are different from themselves, which leads to the oppression of others. The concept of universal human rights is very new in this history of the world. The United Nations passed the first Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1949. At the beginning of a new millennium, there are now more people living in a democracy than in any other kind of government, which is an encouraging development. If a parent is moralistic, his or her children will live in fear of making mistakes and losing the parent's acceptance. Children raised with moralistic thinking will tend to pass it on to their own children.
The greatest obstacle to progress is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. Moralists are under the illusion that they are in possession of perfect knowledge.
Many of us verify our personal worth by looking outside of ourselves for validation. If others approve of us, we're worthy. If others look down on us with disapproval, we assume that we are unworthy. Our awareness of ourselves is not based on an internal sense of self. Rather, the reference point of who I am is found somewhere else. Moralism and authoritarian control go hand in hand. There is an unfortunate fallout from treating people in this way, and that is people are not encouraged to accept responsibility for their actions. Watch the news, read the paper, and look around you. You'll see examples everywhere of people who say, "I didn't do it," when they really did. End of lesson 2.1. Remember, we are only getting started. Good job.